Welcome to the African Climate Alliance podcast. In today's episode, we bring you a thought-provoking conversation that seldom takes center stage in the climate change discourse: the connections between mental health and climate change.
A massive hello to you all. I know I'm not the normal face that you see when it comes to ACA dialogues, but I want to welcome you, pass on the apologies of Michelle, who could not make it, unfortunately, today, but want to know that you do have a familiar face in this space today. Kulu, do you want to just pop on your camera just to say hello so that the people know that it's you and me this evening?
Hi, everyone. I see you there. You glowing. That's good. That's good. We all need to glow, especially for this conversation. You need to glow. Hi, everyone. I'm Kulu. I'm also with ACA, and I will be co-facilitating and co-piloting with Gabriel today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kulu. For those who don't know me, my name is Gabriel. I'm at the African Climate Alliance, and I like to call myself a space holder. And today, that's Kulu and my responsibility is we're going to be space holders. And it's so important that we acknowledge the importance. So important that we acknowledge the importance of holding space when it comes to the topic of today. And the topic of today, playing off of the theme of this month, not only the theme, but the reality of this month, which is mental health and wellness awareness. Today we'll be jumping into mental health and wellness in the climate justice space. And so unpacking the connections between mental health, the environment, and climate justice. And we really hope that today's conversation will feed off of a previous discussion and the workshop that happened on Monday. Do you want to just give us a little breakdown about what Monday was about for those who are only joining today? And then I'll explain a little bit before maybe what we kind of do is we have a back to basics session, which takes a topic, breaks it down, and rebuilds it with a common shared understanding, and following which, so that's every Monday, every last Monday of each month. And then on the Wednesday following that, we have an ACA dialogue, which is where we try to marry. And the word marry is such a weird word. So let's say mesh the kind of lived experience as well as the kind of more academic kind of element. And so really try to bring those realities together. And so we like to believe that experience and lived reality can mean more than one thing. It's not just you have to be an academic to be able to talk on a topic. You who has lived a life and has gone on an adventure and a journey yourself can really begin to kind of claim the narrative and hold space for conversations and discussions of your own. And so, yeah, just to hear a little bit about how Monday went, and then we'll move into today's discussion and break into who our kind of, kind of panelists, but also contributors and kind of creatives and change makers in their own right.
Yes, I like change makers. And we definitely have some creatives. I feel like everyone is creative in their own right. We don't like to believe that we're creative people, but like just the way we go on about life is creative. You know, we have to find creative ways of surviving. So Monday, like Gabriel said, we held our Back to Basics workshop, which happens on every last Monday of every month. And we're basically unpacking, because we have this idea at ACA that we first unpack and understand. And then when we understand, we then discuss, right? So what we built on Monday was understanding what mental health is, what mental wellness is, and what mental well-being is, and how mental wellness and mental well-being comes together to then form pillars for mental health. And we're just basically unpacking the terms and also recognizing the fact that, you know, often when we speak about mental health, we don't speak of social justice issues and how they affect our lives, right? And so as African Climate Alliance this month, we decided that in commemorating Mental Health Awareness Month, which is October, we are then going to bring these two and hope that this is not only something that we do in October, but something that we're going to do beyond October. And sort of like bring in how the state of the climate and the state of our environment how does it affect our well-being, with the understanding that as people, we are of the environment. And when the environment is experiencing changes, our bodies also experience changes. I mean, even with normal environmental changes that are happening, when you having your seasonal changes, for example, your body experiences changes and it reacts differently. And so how much more then do our bodies that are in tune with the environment react when extreme changes that are absolutely abnormal happening? How do our bodies react to that? How do our mental states react to that? And we also unpacked a bit that our mental state, obviously, because our bodies, once again, are in tune with themselves. So when you're experiencing something in the mental and in the emotional, so when you're experiencing something in the brain and in the heart, in the mind and in the heart, it will be expressed in your body and in how you're feeling. And the fact that we just generally feeling a lot of lethargy, so this lack of energy and having no motivation, is directly connected to the fact that our mental state is in this dire straits because our environment is in dire straits because of climate change and global warming. So then we worked a bit more to then understand that. We understood that mental wellness, or wellness generally, refers to these physical aspects that are obviously physical in front of our eyes, which are behaviors and actions that we actively take in making sure that we feel good and we feel better and we're in a healthy state, right? Whereas mental well-being is more of a psychological or mental sort of aspect of our wellness as people. So these feelings of mental well-being are expressed in the things that we're feeling mentally or psychologically, and in the things that we're feeling emotionally, right? And these are obvious mental aspects of our lives. So just generally feeling down, feeling sad, feeling under the weather. I like using that because the weather is horrible, so we're feeling under it. So just generally feeling under the weather, not feeling good, and then getting to the extremes, like then having a clinical diagnosis of anxiety or a clinical diagnosis of a depression and more, right? And then we looked at how do these then affect us as individuals, and understanding that as individuals, we come from communities. Right. So we understood that, well, as young people, we are most likely to be affected because of the things we are sort of exposed to, like social media. That is a lot of information on social media that we're exposed to. So we are most likely to feel eco-anxiety because we're seeing everything that is depressing that is happening around the world. I remember one of the Fridays, I was talking to Gabriel, and I was like, the news are depressing. Like, I have to watch them once a week now.
I remember you even came up to me and you said, Gabe, I'm overwhelmed. Look at what's going on.
Like the world's falling apart because of climate change. It's a war. It's a war. It's corruption. That's going on. And we constantly have this, constant information overload. And we then fall prey to something called doom scrolling, right? You go into your TikTok, you go into Instagram. One thing I hate about Instagram, you go onto Instagram, you forget why you went onto Instagram, you close Instagram, and then a minute later, you get on Instagram.
You go back on it and again.
Exactly. So then we fall prey to doom scrolling. And the fact that there's algorithms now because of data mining that then feed you the same type of information, it is only normal that we get some sort of overload. So then how do we deal with those as communities and as activists who work with these communities? And also understanding the alliance part of Climate Alliance, and that when we're dealing with communities, it's coming from the community. It has to be the community that says, we are depressed and we want to work on it this way and this way. And so we spoke about building community, which I'm really sure some of the things that we spoke about in terms of adaptation are going to come from some of our guests that we have here today with us. And we hope to see them as part of our network next time we're having, other conversations and so on. But that's what we discussed on Monday. And we're hoping that today we're going to build on what was unpacked so that we can discuss.
And I love those questions at the end, Kulu. Thank you so much for the kind of breakdown of what Monday was. And for everyone who's like, wait, I didn't get a chance to write down what Kulu said. Don't worry. What they said will be put in a wrap post and will be put on social media and distributed to everybody involved in the space. And so what I loved about how you ended that is, is what can we do? What is the lived reality? How do we work on it together? Understanding the role that people play in promoting mental wellness and health, and a lot more. And I think today with our guests and our panelists and our change makers, we'll begin to unpack that conversation and hold space for broader discussion as well. And so without further ado, I will introduce our speakers for today and go from there. And of course, if our speakers do happen to jump in and out of the call, as they come, we'll start working with them. Because I believe in the same way that we don't know exactly how climate change will affect us on a day-to-day basis, we have to allow for conversation to emerge naturally as well. And I believe in emergence work being something directly linked to kind of the Afrocentric solution to climate justice, or to climate change, and to its linked intersectional issues. And so, without further ado, I'll share my screen, and we'll begin to understand who we have with us today. And I'll leave it on the screen a little bit longer so everyone can have a deep dive into who our panelists are. And so today we are joined, like I said, with three amazing panelists. Vuyokazi Ngemntu. And Vuyokazi is a writer, performer situated in Cape Town, South Africa, whose praxis, now praxis is the practical and it's a theory and the action. It's bringing things into kind of motion. It's learning how to swim online and then jumping into the pool, whose praxis uses poetry, song, physical theater, storytelling, and ritual to navigate ancestral trauma, confront inequality, and inspire healing. She's an alumna of Bodhi Khaya Artist Residency 2022, where she conceptualized and presented a seminal performance work titled Ukuvuka, Kuka, Nomhlaba, exploring the significance of land in healing. She's a member of the Daai Deng Hub, which was awarded a grant by AfricaNoFilter to use spoken word, documentary filmmaking, and music to interpret the concerns of ordinary Africans in relation to climate change, presented at COP27. And I just want to name something before we even go any further. It's just notice the difference in channeling change making. Just think about, where do you see someone channel their work and their passion and the need for what we need in South Africa in such creative ways? And so her story, The Serpent's Handmaiden, was shortlisted for the Share Africa Climate Change Award 2022. Her work has appeared in the Kalahari Review, Herri, Ibua Journal, Short.Sharp.Stories, New Contrast, a Care Review, Pepper Coast Lit, the Culture Review, Aerodrome, and elsewhere. So as you can see, this is a multifaceted individual who I hope will hold space for many of the discussions and questions we have to unpack today. So thank you so much, Vuyokazi, for joining us today. And we'll give you a moment to jump on, just so you can say hi to everybody in a minute. But just so while we're on a row, Nomhlaba. Mpo is a sociologist, writer, and scholar of African environmentalism. Mpo is a PhD candidate in environmental humanities South, and environmental humanities South, and holds an MA in sociology at Wits University, and an MPhil in environmental humanities South, UCT. In 2018, he received the Mail and Guardian 200 Young South Africans Award, environmental category. He's also an Open Society Foundation scholar. His work focuses on Blackness, spatial politics, migration, and cities. And so a massive welcome to you, Mpo, and for the contributions and the energy that I know you'll bring into the space. I must say, and I must say this now, when I found out who our panelists were, and I kind of made a bit of a deep dive, I felt like, to be in the presence. And so I just want to name my appreciation for you all, as well as for Stinka Ngemntu. So she's a mental health and psychiatric nurse practitioner based in Kenya. And so this is where we start looking at the broader region of the broader continent of Africa, not just in South Africa. And I believe that our panelists today and our change makers today will bring a lot more than just their own perspective, the perspectives of those within their collective. She is also a founder of Threshold of Hope Africa, which is a community-based organization that creates mental health awareness and a prerequisite to stigma eradication through advocacy. Now, stigma eradication. I want to hear you say stigma eradication, because when it comes to mental well-being in the African context, I think we cannot overlook the massive stigma that comes alongside it. And we'll talk about what stigma means in a bit as we start having this discussion with our panelists. And so, yes, go for it. Stinika, would you like to just start us off with a bit about yourself, how you got into the work that you're doing, and how today's topic talks to you as an individual, as a practitioner. Welcome to the space.
Well, my name is Tinka Kimunto. I'm from Kisii, Kenya. I'm a mental health and psychiatric nurse practitioner here in Kenya. I'm the founding member of Threshold of Hope Africa, a community-based organization that champions for mental health and its related issues. So, fast forward, what took me to what I do? I was an education student at the university when I dropped because of life challenges. So I went to medical school where I opted to do psychiatric nursing. When I got there is when I realized the gap in mental health space, because there was a lot of stigma. Personally, as a psychiatric student, we by then were very stigmatized that you can't even speak to someone, because if someone sees you, they're like, are you sure by the time you are done with those patients you will not be sick? I'm like, do midwives give birth every day? Do people working in the general ward get sick every day? So I'm like, mental illness is a disease like any disease. So this is where I got my energy from, and it's doing me more justice, and it's very fair to me, because I love getting hope through action. I love talking to people, because I know God has given me a chance to give someone a reason to survive amidst all the challenges, because in our age, no one wants to talk about mental health because it looks as a taboo or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that you can't be compassionate and work with people with mental health issues or with challenges because of that stigma of, oh, won't you catch it? Won't you catch it? And I love that will a midwife be giving birth every day comment. I think we don't think about that enough. Is there are practical examples to explain how we can kind of like begin to destigmatize this space. And so firstly, thank you so much for joining us and for kind of introing us to a little bit more of what I wanted to hear from you already today. I think today's conversation, just by that intro alone, will prove to be quite a powerful one. So a massive thank you for joining us. If have in the room, Paul, are you with us today? And if so, we'd love to hear a little bit about who you are, your story, and how today's topic talks to you.
Sorry, Mr. Gabriel. I think I'm having a network challenge. I don't know what you are saying. Maybe you can say it again. I'm having a network challenge.
Not a problem. Sorry. I'm happy to repeat what I'm saying. But just in future, please use the chat as we kind of dive into the space here. So a big part of what I'm doing right now is just mentioning who the panelists are, asking them to mention who they are because they know themselves better than I know them. And we've just heard from Stinka now, and so wanting to open a room for Mpo, if he is in the room. Otherwise, in the interim, Vuyokazi, would you like to grace us with who you are and how you got into the space and the work and the passion that you bring to it as well, and the unique take from those in our panel today?
Certainly. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join this conversation, by the way. My greetings to yourself, Gabriel, to Tulumango, to the rest of the panelists, and everybody else that has taken time aside from their busy lives to just help us flesh out these issues. My positionality with this issue is from my background as a writer-performer who once bored with writing poetry and feeling like the glass ceiling was too clearly visible, ventured into fiction. And as I was trying to figure my way around fiction, I think it is a natural inclination to veer towards speculative fiction in that, okay, I'm bored with realism right now and the kind of boundaries and confines that it imposes on my mind. Then speculative fiction, real magical realism, and everything related became the next best thing, in that I was always trying to project towards what alternative realities would look like and trying to propagate new imaginaries for the kind of world that I'd like to see. And at times when frustrated, just projecting my discontent in terms of, the dystopian views that we sometimes fall into in terms of what the planet could become if we don't take action. So it's a space that I've comfortably settled in, still trying to work my way around it because I'm a self-taught writer, and also writing echo poetry when it feels like you just need a way of compacting these expressions of climate action and everything that we want to propagate in the world. So that's how I came into this, and very excited to be a part of this conversation and looking forward to the insights of my fellow panelists and our guests. Thank you.
A massive thank you for that. And I'd like to latch on to that point of self-taught writer. I can tell you now, sometimes self-taught writers are the best writers because they don't come from, oh, I learned William Shakespeare told me this. What does William know? At the end of the day, it's within. And I think as that progresses, it becomes even more authentic in the storytelling. Because, we all have a story that we can tell. And I believe that we shouldn't rather limit what is put out into the world of what standards have been set. And so a massive thank you for bringing that kind of alternate, and I say alternate not in a negative connotation, but an alternate point of view and experience to this space. And I look forward to kind of diving a bit more into depth. And if our third panelist is in the room with us, I'm not sure, but if you are in the room with us, Mpo, it would be lovely to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll move on into a bit more of a discussional space. If anyone has any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat as we move through today. And as Mpo jumps into the call today, or wherever they may be at the moment, hold him into space, into mind, and ensure that they are properly introduced into the discussion as they emerge into the space. And so, my first question, and I'd like to just play on exactly what I touched on a little bit early on, and starting with you, Vuyokazi, is this idea of the relation between mental health and climate justice. And climate justice, like Kulu says, not just being the environmental, but being the social, the economic, the environmental, being intersectional. I'd love to hear a little bit about just how you channel that through your work beyond what you've initially told us now. How do you channel the interconnectedness of not only your positionality, but of mental health or rather wellness as well, not limiting what you have to speak about, and its links towards justice, the justice element when it comes to kind of the climate justice space?
I think one of the issues that I'm always trying to contend with as a South African in my fiction is land dispossession, economic exclusion, and the impact of spatial dispossession, be it on our immediate environments and how we live in the townships that we live in, and also on how we conduct ourselves in the world with the scarcity of resources that we have to contend with. So I'm always constantly trying to take those things into account and sort of trying to craft alternate realities that not only accommodate and acknowledge that, but try to rectify that. And also constantly referencing African spirituality in order to get a sense of what this has looked like for our forebears and what advice or wisdom they can kind of lend us as we try to move forward. So I'm constantly trying to balance that with my climate fiction and trying to make sure that it is as authentically African and in that way relatable as possible by acknowledging the realities that we live under and how different they are to maybe our Western counterparts who write in the same genre. So always having my feet firmly on the ground while still projecting towards, I don't know, the stars, I guess, and being informed
I love that.
about everything.
I felt tingled here, and I mean it genuinely, like, because I think it's so. This is the first time I've actually, and I'll be honest, my first time having a conversation with someone who has explained their work as, I stay grounded, I stay rooted. However, I don't limit that to the earth. I limit that to not just my immediate surroundings, like, oh, I'm standing in front of Tulu, I'm having a conversation with Tulu. I'm grounded in things. However, I allow myself to expand and explore. And I think when we talk about climate justice and just in the solution element of climate justice, just sometimes look to the practical solution. What can I fix now? And we don't project forward or up or around. How can we start reimagining? How can we start re-envisioning? And I think the links between mental well-being and mental health and well-being and climate justice need solutions, especially from an Afrocentric perspective, need solutions that aren't just the cool, how can we deal with the right now in the moment? How do we figure out solutions from the right now? Because unfortunately, the right now is a space built in stigma, is a space that is still mixed and deeply rooted in colonialism. And so I absolutely adore the kind of perspective that you bring into the space with being grounded in the reality of people and every day, allowing yourself and the work that you do to expand beyond the everyday, because noting that the everyday has its limitations. And so I want to just name that and thank that point. And while I'm on that point about where our everyday is with stigma, I'm wanting to pass the mic to Stinka and ask, as a practitioner, as someone who is on a day-to-day basis in the space and dealing with the space and working with mental health and well-being, as someone in psychiatric kind of like as a psychiatric nurse practitioner, how do you, and you alluded to it a little bit earlier, that's why I was excited, how do you kind of bring your work into the links between climate change and mental health or wellness? How do you practice your not just your work, but the realities that's going on, whilst also existing within the stigmas that we face in the world?
Thank you so much once more for the good question. This is a very good learning session, and I'm glad that a good number has just turned up to learn. The way I relate my work as a mental health practitioner and in the climate justice space, number one, I want to make it clear that mental health and climate change or anything to do with environment is intertwined, so you cannot separate them. When we talk about mental health or well-being, in the aspect of well-being, we have environment as one that we cannot be talking about mental health without talking about climate change or environmental conservation or something like that. Financial, everything, like you must have to be mentally health. You have to be well in all aspects, and then you have to even have a sense of belonging. So when we address the climate justice, it does not only involve the mitigation of the causes of climate change, but we also talk about policies and resources that are in place to support vulnerable communities. These are like in this space we talk about the in a new place where they were not born. We have the inclusion and diversity. Like all of them, they work together, and this can be a very positive. If this can bring a positive effect on mental health by reducing the psychological distress associated with climate change. People, when they move from one place to another, they are affected before they get adjusted to the climate of that place. Yes.
Thank you for that. And I love how you made it very clear to us, irrefutably clear, that it is not one without the other, but rather that it is connected, and that we cannot view it as anything but connected. I mean, imagine pulling yourself and saying, well, today I'm not facing this, I'm not facing this. Like, how can you immediately say that your everyday, like, for example, if I said, as a brown body, today I'm going to switch off being a brown body and I'm going to live life. I can't do that. So I think in the same way that we can't immediately change our identity factors and our positionality, we've got to acknowledge that there are certain things that are so deeply interconnected that we can't change those either. Unless it's the link between climate change and colonialism, because we will break it down. And so I'm wanting to just kind of bring one more question in before I open the floor to Tulu to kind of lead us into another question for the kind of session today, which is just how do we begin? And this is a question that can go to either you, Vuyokazi, or to Stinika, and maybe you both want to answer it in your own way. But on a day-to-day basis, how do you believe that we, as a collective in the climate justice movement, can begin to center wellness and the mental health of activists and change makers? I think for too often we find that, as a change maker or as an activist, our day-to-day is just this, it's just this, it's just this, it's just this, it's just this. And we don't have a moment to actually say, how am I doing? So how do you believe we can begin as a climate justice movement, center our wellness and mental health? And I maybe want to just hear, maybe we start with you, Stinika. I know you just spoke, but just hearing from you and then moving to Vuyokazi and just kind of seeing where we go from there.
Your question kindly.
The question is, how can we begin as a climate justice movement how can we begin to center the wellness and mental health of activists and change makers?
We have major issues to put us into that. And number one, because we are all activists and this is what we are focusing on, we should start on education and awareness as the first step. Education and awareness. Then we move to where we advocate for policy change, so that we can have policies that favor this issue of climate change and mental health, which I know in most countries, especially in Africa and even in Kenya, it's then that people are coming up with such policies to speak about mental health. But for sure, those are the spaces that we need so that we can center on the wellness and mental health as activists. And then we promote self-care practices. It starts with us. You cannot give what you don't have. So it has to start with us. And then even if you're going to talk to someone else, they'll feel like, you know what? This is how I practice, and this protects my mental health, or this keeps me up to speed. So it has to start from you before you go to tell others. So you make sure you and your team, you are doing good practices on that will promote your mental well-being, right? And then we foster the issue of supporting initiatives in communities. We join other activists. We have learning sessions. Like for us in our organization, every 2 months we recruit young people who are willing were willing to study about mental health. It's like a 1 month course. We take them through, they get to learn, and so that when they start advocating, they know what they are talking about, they know exactly what they want, and they know how to approach even the people in the community where mental health is very stigmatized. Because I see a case where you see someone, you want to talk about mental health, and people be like, I am not sick, so I don't need any conversation about that. You see, such people have to change their paradigms on how they view issues to do with mental health. That's when we can get access and get information to the grassroots level. So it has to start with us. And then we have to address these issues. Like, we don't just beat by the bush. We address them, because as Africans, I know most of us, we tend to believe that people who have mental illness are bewitched. We don't look at the factors that can bring such issues. So I think it's the right time we stop spiritualizing mental illness and other issues. We start seeking for help, because there is help. And then you see, most people again get mental illness from their workplaces. So we should have that promote mental well-being for this stuff. Yes. So, as an individual, again, you can engage on self-reflection and self-care.
But Tunika, I wanted to say thank you for that, because I think what you've done now is you've also shed a bit of light on the individual element of how we can begin to center it, but also spoke about the systemic element, the need to make sure that policy reflects what people are going through. And it, more importantly, doesn't just reflect what people are going through, but it channels solutions. I'd like to say channel solutions, because I think policy shouldn't just say, well, people are suffering, the end. It should say people are suffering, and this is how we are going to begin to fix it and how we will action it. And so a massive thank you for beginning to kind of say it's more than just modeling a positive kind of well-being practice. It's not only that, it is that, but it's not only that. It's also the deeper systemic need for change. And I'm wanting to just highlight that element. And as I pass to you, Vuyokazi, I just want to ask, just to kind of add a different element to kind of your question, because that's how I like to kind of move it, is how do you believe we can center mental health and wellness in the climate justice movement, in activists and in change makers, but through your lens of art, of creativity, of spiritualism? How do we begin to view it more than just practicing what we supposed, or practicing what we preach, as well as the kind of deep systemic change? But how do we begin to look at centering mental health, wellness in activists and change makers through your lens?
Thank you for that, Gabriel. I think the first point for me would be to look at our languaging around mental illness and mental health issues, and to veer towards destigmatization, as Stinker said, in that a lot of what we communicate about mental health tends to be derogatory, tends to incapacitate the sufferer, as it were, as somebody who is something of an invalid and needs to be given consideration outside of what is the norm. Whereas I think within our indigenous knowledge systems and within our ways of being in the world, we do prize empathy, and interpersonal relationships that are guarded in such a way that we're able to hold space for each other on an individual level and on a communal level. Examples such as when a family is grieving in our communities, it's usually the women mostly, yes, but it's usually the community that comes through and takes care of the bulk of the pragmatic concerns of that household, while it's understood that these people need to tend to their psychological well-being, need to process their grief and everything else. I think within our activism space as well, an awareness of what our strengths are, as well as an awareness of what our needs are at any given moment, that'll allow us to shift and say, okay, if you do not have capacity to handle this particular task, I can take over, or so-and-so can take over. And that comes with being aware of how it is that we can share space more than anything, and validating the input of every individual and trying to deconstruct the hierarchical view that, for instance, academia has the answers, or if it is concerning a Black person, then a Sangoma will have the answers, and starts to collectively sort of, what is the word? To sort of pull in together and contribute to the resolution of each problem as it comes along, and understanding the need for rest when it arises, and validating that need, and creating space for people to be able to vocalize that I cannot do this. I know it is asked of me. I know it is for the good of the planet, but where I'm at in my life, I don't have the capacity, and knowing that there will be someone ready to take over, and trusting that as well, that the bulk of the work does not rest on you solely as an individual, that there is a community of willing and capable people that can do the work as well. So empathy. I think that's where it's at for me.
I love that. And also I feel a bit called out. Because, it's so true. When a tragedy happens, oftentimes the community is in the forefront, but who's there for the community when the community is in the forefront? And then not to name the stigmas that exist within Black and Brown communities predominantly, but not only. And what that actually does to a person, and the generational kind of burdens and traumas that build up over time that, we end up fighting with, and our children will end up fighting with. And so I'm just wanting to just latch on to something before I just check if Mpo is in the room again, is just naming that importance of you do not have to carry it all. And the brave thing, the bold thing, the actual activist change maker thing is to acknowledge, hey, this thing that I'm holding, I will drop it if I hold it any longer. What I'm saying is there's a Greek story, but there's a story I like a lot more about this dung beetle that pushes this ball up and up and up, and as this kind of dung beetle pushes all of this dirt and poo up the mountain, it's this burden of like, well, I'm doing a good thing, I'm creating this thing that I was born to do. But at what point do you realize that the second you stop holding that and you can't hold it anymore, it will roll and fall on you? And so it's being brave enough to say, hey, I can't. But going back to what Stinga said, is being able to know when it is that you can't, which is building that foundation of knowledge and understanding. Having the lived experience, think of what you've said there, is that lived experience being so crucial to redefining legislation that protects people and that safeguards them and that guides the way that we develop a future where mental health, wellness, and climate justice are like this, and that we are building a future where justice for all is deeply rooted. A massive thank you to our speakers today, to Vuyokazi, to Stinga, for your perspective, not only on the questions, but on the broader understanding of the topic today.
And there you have it, another eye-opening episode of the African Climate Alliance podcast. Stay tuned for more engaging conversations and thought-provoking dialogues as we journey together towards a future that is just, inclusive, and sustainable. In the meantime, you can stay connected with us by following us on our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or learn more about our work and join our youth activist network on our website. All links will be left in the episode description. Catch you on the next episode.